Is Pluto a planet? Why was it a planet, and why not anymore? Peering through the glass lens, Clyde slowly panned the dark sky. An endless deep space riddled with specks of light in a distance that almost seems unimaginable. Night after night, his gaze breached the atmosphere to see what he can find until one day he came across an object that appeared to be moving. Finally, in the spring of 1930, Clyde Tombaugh discovered what appeared to be a planet soon to be called Pluto. At least, this is what the world called it for the next 75 years to come. Welcome to Brian Bender's Solarium, and join us as we walk through the history of a planet that, well, is no longer a planet, and how the discoveries over almost a century later will cause us to rewrite the world's teachings of the celestial bodies in the sky we call planets. It has proven to be the most troublesome issue in modern science. In one stroke, thousands of textbooks were out of date. One of the most controversial moves in the history of space. So what happened? Let's start from the beginning. In 1905, American astronomer Percival Lowell first captured hints of Pluto's presence from unusual variations he found in the orbits of Neptune and Uranus, implying that the gravity of another universe was tugging from beyond on these two planets. Lowell predicted the location of the mystery planet in 1915, but died without discovering it. Pluto was eventually discovered at the Lowell Observatory by Clyde Tombaugh in 1930, based on predictions by Lowell and other fellow astronomers. Pluto was named after 11-year-old Venetia Burney of Oxford, England, who had recommended to her grandfather that the name of the modern world should come from the Roman god of the underworld. The name was then passed on to Lowell Observatory by her grandparents. Also, the name honors Percival Lowell, whose initials are Pluto's first two letters. It was declared a planet shortly after Pluto was discovered in 1930 as the ninth in our solar system. After the discovery of Pluto, many astronomers believed that it was responsible for the disruptions they detected in the orbit of Neptune. Actually, it was these disruptions that prompted the search for a planet beyond it. Additional findings, though, determined that it was smaller than originally thought. In the year 1978, after American astronomer James Christie discovered Pluto's largest moon, Charon, astronomers were able to estimate Pluto's mass and found that it was lightweight and did not exert a strong enough gravitational effect to cause the disruptions observed. Pluto was discovered to be less massive and smaller than all the other planets. Furthermore, its orbit is very inclined, up to 17 degrees relative to the ecliptic, the plane characterized by Earth's orbit around the Sun. The other planetary orbits have lesser inclinations. But alas, Pluto was taken off the list of planets in the year 2006, but its reclassification as a dwarf actually puts it into a thrilling new category. Many folks were left wondering why the shift was made and what the variation was between a dwarf planet and a planet. Once in common scientific culture considered to be the ninth planet and most distant planet from the Sun, but is now the solar system's largest known dwarf planet. It is also one of the biggest recorded members of the Kuiper Belt, a dark region outside Neptune's orbit that is believed to be occupied with 1 trillion or more comets and hundreds of thousands of rocky, icy bodies, each greater than 62 miles, i.e., 100 kilometers wide. Beyond Pluto, astronomers were finding bodies of similar scale in the early 21st century, such as Makemake, Sedna, Eris, and others. Such studies raise the question, should all these other worlds be given planetary status by the IAU? The IAU held its triennial meeting in Prague in August 2006. They voted on the adoption of Resolution 5A at the end of this meeting, Definition of Planet. Under this newly adopted definition, to be considered a planet, a body has to meet 3 conditions. First, a stable orbit around the Sun must have been formed by a body. Pluto checked the box on this criteria. In fact, this state fits thousands of bodies. Second, a spheroidal shape must have been formed by the body. When a body is big enough and huge, it will be molded into a spheroid by gravity. This condition is also fulfilled by Pluto. Third, and eventually, the body must have its debris field removed. As it takes its orbital rotation, any objects in its path must either be cleared out of the path, or the planet must integrate the objects into the planetary mass. In this case, Pluto fails as its orbit moves close to or even within the Kuiper belt, an area from which short-period comets emerge. Thus, the IAU demoted Pluto, firmly established the other 8 planets as planets, and excluded all the bodies beyond Pluto by implementing Resolution 5A, all in one fell swoop. The International Astronomical Union, IAU, downgraded Pluto's status to that of a dwarf planet in August 2006, indicating that only the rocky worlds of the inner solar system and the gas giants of the outer system will be designated as planets from now on. The inner solar system is the space area which is smaller than the radius of the orbit of Jupiter around the Sun. It includes the asteroid belt, as well as Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, the terrestrial planets. The gas giants are Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. But now, instead of the 9 we used to have, we have 8 planets. This reclassification was initially perceived as a demotion. At the time, this was a major issue of the planetary status of Pluto and had gained controversy by stirring up discussion in the scientific community and among the general public. A research community, including members of the New Horizon mission, introduced a new concept of planethood focused on round objects in space smaller than stars, which would bring the number of planets from 8 to approximately 100 in our solar system. Obviously, some defiantly argue that Pluto is still a planet and that no resolution can induce them to change their minds. Over a decade later, there are some, mostly in the general public, who still can't seem to accept the IAU's newly defined reclassification. While the New Horizons craft's recent observations have already shown that Pluto is bigger, more geologically dynamic, and compromises a thicker atmosphere than once assumed, in Resolution 5A it still does not meet the third requirement. In order to assign planetary status back to Pluto, the IAU would have to follow a revised planet concept. So what do we call Pluto now? As mentioned previously, Pluto is now considered the largest dwarf planet in our solar system. As described by the IAU and NASA, a dwarf planet basically meets the first 2 criteria, but not the third. It is a celestial body in direct sun orbit that is large enough to influence its form by gravitational forces rather than mechanical forces, and is thus ellipsoid in shape, but has not cleared other objects from its neighboring area. Therefore, any large body that does not fulfill these specifications of a full-size planet is now known as a dwarf planet, including Pluto, which shares its orbital neighborhood with objects of the Kuiper belt. Agree or disagree? Is Pluto a planet? Let us know in the comments below. So will Pluto ever regain status upgrade back to planet in the eyes of the scientific community? Who knows? Maybe one day in the far future, Pluto will start to build enough mass to clear its orbital path. However, if this did happen, it would be in millions of years, far beyond our time on this planet. With that said, space exploration advances are taking us to new heights and new discoveries. Space discoveries over the last 100 years have been exponentially greater than ever imagined. Who knows what the next 100 years will bring us as our visibility dives further and further into the dark horizon. Maybe one day, new findings will lead us to new definitions and terminology that will once again force us to change how we classify planets and other known and even unknown objects in space.